Our landscape is littered with abandoned spaces, sad monuments to a time long forgotten. While most people are oblivious to their existence, there are those who see them as portals to the past. They go in looking for answers and share what they find online. Not your everyday urban explorer, but seekers of truth, trying to uncover a history abandoned. We dug into the secretive online world of the urban explorer and found a lot of chatter on social media. We found many that mentioned 3 hotspots in New York. Vocative decided to investigate. First stop, Kings Park Mental Hospital. Explorer and researcher Will Ellis is our guide.
This morning we started out real early, got up at 3 a.m. It was about an hour drive out here to Long Island to see Kings Park, which is one of the largest, most kind of well-known mental institutions in this area. Now, the reason we had to start out that early is that this place is really well known for having very tight security, so you can't just show up at any time of the day. You really have to get in there, before sunrise. It's a wonderfully kind of creepy, surreal place to be, and considering the history of this place and the kind of darkness in that history, it's pretty imposing when you first come up to it. We just squeezed through this tiny little opening, had to jump down through a grate to get in here. And one of the first rooms we've come to is this craft room. You can see the walls are covered with murals that were most likely done by a patient. All over the floor you see these craft projects kind of still in progress, half-finished rugs and weavings, looms. So we're about to make our way up from the kind of basement floor, heading up the stairs, and now we're coming to the living area where residents would sleep and spend most of their time. And then these kind of mass living areas, which are just split up by little cubicles where you'd have tons of beds stuffed inside. They even were having to fit beds in the hallway. At its peak, Kings Park had over 9,000 residents living there, which is well over its capacity. It was founded, in the late 1800s. At that point, it was kind of a facility to house the mentally ill coming from Brooklyn, from Kings County. As the population really started to expand very quickly in the city and across the United States, they built more and more buildings to house this influx of psychotic and mentally ill patients. Like most institutions, the location of Kings Park was chosen because it was a very rural and pleasant kind of country environment, which was thought to be therapeutic and sort of relax the mind of these psychotic individuals. It also became a self-sustaining community that would raise its own food and livestock. Places like this had their own power plant, their own firehouse, their own hospitals. There was no reason these patients ever had to leave once they were checked in. One of the things that makes Kings Park kind of notable is it was one of the first institutions to use lobotomy and electroshock therapy, and they used it really extensively here. You hear lobotomy and shock therapy now, and it immediately conjures these images of horrific, traumatic treatments. and they were at the time. We look back at the lobotomy as a really grisly, grotesque procedure, but at the time it was really celebrated and lauded as this huge development in the treatment of mental illness. And in fact, the first doctors who discovered this treatment were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for medicine. So we might look at the history of Kings Park and this kind of excessive use of lobotomies and shock therapy and think of it as kind of this really sinister, dark place. But really the entire time, Kings Park was on the cutting edge of psychological treatment, of the treatment of mental illness. In the 1960s, when they started developing these antipsychotic drugs, Kings Park was still on the cutting edge of that research and was one of the first institutions to implement the use of antipsychotic medication. It's easy to look back on this very tragic situation and try to lay blame on certain individuals. But you have to remember that there were really no other options for these people, and there was no effective treatment available. Before the development of antipsychotic drugs, there was this need felt to isolate these people from society. They were really doing the best they could. It doesn't stop that from being a tragic and pretty shameful part of our history, but it's important to remember that.